Good evening, beautiful souls. Let's talk woman to woman, heart to heart. There comes a point in every woman's life where she must learn to honor the sacred within herself. And one of the greatest acts of self-respect is knowing that not everything needs to be shared, especially not with every man who enters your life. Self-worth begins with understanding that not everything about you has to be visible to be valuable. In a world that increasingly rewards oversharing, privacy becomes a quiet revolution, a personal boundary that signals respect for oneself. The woman who keeps certain aspects of her life private is not hiding, she is honoring herself. She understands that what is sacred doesn't need to be on display. Privacy, in this sense, becomes a mirror of self-worth. It reflects a sense of internal value that does not need constant validation or exposure. When a woman chooses to keep parts of her life to herself, whether that be her past, her dreams, her pain, or her plans, she is not withholding for the sake of mystery alone. She is protecting the core of her identity. She understands that her experiences are not up for consumption or critique by just anyone. And this awareness comes from a place of strength, not fear. It is a quiet confidence that says, I know who I am, and I don't need to prove it through disclosure. Privacy draws a line between what is public and what is personal. That line, when honored, becomes a form of emotional wealth. It shields a woman from unnecessary judgment, manipulation, or misunderstanding. When everything is shared, every thought, every emotion, every detail, then everything becomes negotiable, open to being shaped by someone else's opinions or agenda. But when a woman holds something sacred, she maintains authorship over her life story. She decides who gets a chapter, who gets a page, and who doesn't get in the book at all. This sense of control is essential to self-worth. When you know your worth, you don't hand it out freely, you curate it. You protect it like a priceless heirloom, because in many ways, that's exactly what it is. Your time, your body, your dreams, your mind, these are not public property, and the act of deciding who gets access to them is an act of radical self-love. Privacy also fosters inner clarity. In silence and solitude, we find out what we really think, what we really want, what we truly feel. Without the noise of external opinions, we can differentiate between who we are and who the world expects us to be. That space uncluttered by judgment or expectation allows self-worth to grow. You begin to value your peace, your perspective, your power. Moreover, privacy protects a woman from defining herself by reaction. When too much is shared too soon, her sense of self can be molded by the responses she receives. Approval becomes addictive, and disapproval becomes devastating. But when she keeps her most intimate truths to herself or within a trusted circle, she builds a core that is unshakable. She is no longer swayed by likes, comments, or external praise. Her validation comes from within, not from how others perceive her story. We often hear that honesty is the foundation of every healthy relationship. And while that's true in principle, the idea that every truth must be spoken in order to create trust is misleading, and sometimes even harmful. Not every truth builds trust. In fact, some truths, when revealed at the wrong time, in the wrong way, or to the wrong person, can damage more than they heal. Truth requires discernment, not just courage. There is a difference between being honest and being transparent. Honesty is a value, speaking with integrity and not intentionally misleading someone. Transparency, on the other hand, is about disclosure, and it requires wisdom. The assumption that full disclosure always fosters intimacy is a romantic notion, not a realistic one. Some truths are raw, unresolved, and deeply personal. They belong in spaces that are equipped to hold them, with people who have earned the right to hear them. When someone shares too much too soon, especially in a romantic relationship, it can create emotional overload. The listener may not be ready to process what is being revealed. This can lead to confusion, discomfort, or even judgment, not because the truth itself is wrong, but because it wasn't shared in the right context or with the right level of trust already established. In these moments, truth can feel like a burden instead of a bridge. There are also truths that serve the speaker more than the listener. Sometimes people share difficult or intimate details not to build trust, but to relieve their own emotional pressure. They offload pain without considering the impact it will have on the person receiving it. That kind of confession may feel cathartic in the moment, but it can erode the foundation of a relationship if the listener wasn't emotionally ready, or if the disclosure changes how they perceive the other person. Another layer to this is the idea that some truths, especially about the past, don't always belong in the present. A relationship is built on shared experience and mutual respect, not necessarily full exposure of everything that came before. Certain truths, like past mistakes, emotional wounds, or complex relationships, may be completely valid, but revealing them might reopen old scars or provoke insecurities. If the information does not serve the present or support the growth of the bond, it can create distance rather than connection. Discernment is the quiet partner of honesty. It helps us know when to speak and when to hold back. It helps us understand that truth is not only about what we say, but how and why we say it. Sharing personal truths is not a performance of vulnerability. It's a deliberate act that must be rooted in mutual respect and emotional safety. Without that safety, truth can feel like exposure rather than intimacy. Trust is not built solely on the quantity of truth shared. It's built on consistency, empathy, and timing. Some truths require maturity to handle, and not every person, or every moment, is equipped for that task. In a world where exposure is constant and privacy is often mistaken for secrecy, mystery becomes a form of quiet rebellion and a profound source of power. The woman who does not reveal everything she thinks, feels, or desires is not playing games. She is exercising control over her narrative. She understands that when people know everything about you, they begin to assume they can predict you, label you, and eventually control parts of you. Mystery interrupts that assumption. It commands curiosity instead of complacency. Mystery is not about manipulation or withholding affection. It's about maintaining a part of yourself that remains untouched by external opinion. There is something magnetic about the woman who speaks with intention, who chooses her moments, who doesn't lay all her cards on the table at once. People lean in not because she is elusive, but because she carries the energy of someone who values herself enough to not give everything away freely. Power, in this context, is not dominance over others. It is influence over one's environment and emotional space. When you are mysterious, you maintain control over how much of yourself you give, when you give it, and to whom. That selective openness protects your emotional boundaries. It ensures that only those who are patient, respectful, and attentive get to see the layers beneath your surface. And in that selectivity, you hold power. There's also a psychological element to mystery. Human beings are wired to be drawn toward the unknown. The moment someone believes they've fully figured you out, their attention tends to shift. Predictability, while safe, often breeds complacency, but when you maintain an air of mystery, when you reveal parts of yourself slowly, thoughtfully, you keep people engaged, not because you're being distant, but because you're being deliberate. Mystery also preserves your internal energy. When you don't feel compelled to explain or justify every move, you conserve mental and emotional bandwidth. That reserve of energy can then be poured into growth, creativity, and relationships that truly matter. The woman who preserves mystery often has more time to focus on her own evolution because she's not constantly managing how she's perceived or received by others. Moreover, mystery creates a natural filter. Those who are impatient with not knowing everything about you right away often reveal their entitlement or lack of emotional depth. But those who stay, who respect your pace and honor your privacy, are the ones worthy of access. In this way, mystery becomes a protective shield. It guards your time, your energy, and your spirit from people who are not aligned with your values. There is a difference between being open and being exposed. Openness invites connection. Exposure risks erosion. When a woman leaves something to the imagination, her thoughts, her feelings, her next move, she is not being evasive, she is commanding respect. She is reminding the world that there is more to her than meets the eye, and that access to her inner world is something to be earned, not assumed. The past is a place of lessons, not a place of residence. Yet, so many people, especially women, carry the weight of their past like a shadow that refuses to leave. Whether it's heartbreak, mistakes, trauma, or even moments of weakness, society often conditions women to believe that their history dictates their worth in the present. But identity is not a fixed story written by yesterday's events. Who you were is not who you are. Growth is proof of change, and transformation is a form of truth. When a woman evolves, she is not denying her past, she's redefining her future. The experiences she went through might shape her perspective, but they do not get to claim her identity unless she allows them to. The mistakes you made, the people you trusted, the things you tolerated, those are chapters, not definitions. What matters most is how you show up now, how you choose to live today, and what you decide to believe about yourself going forward. Clinging to the past can quietly become a prison. When you over-identify with who you used to be, you shrink your capacity for growth. You start to see yourself through the eyes of former versions, old habits, or broken patterns. You start to believe the stories that came from pain instead of power. But every new day is an invitation to rewrite that story. And that rewriting begins when you stop letting past failures or relationships shape your sense of worth. There's a kind of quiet power in refusing to explain your past to everyone you meet. You don't owe anyone a tour through your personal history in order to validate your present self. What you've overcome is sacred, it belongs to you, and unless someone has shown the emotional maturity and empathy to honor your truth, they don't need to know every detail of it. Sometimes the most radical form of self-love is choosing silence over unnecessary justification. We live in a culture where people want to know your scars before they know your strengths. But leading with your past can often lead to being judged by it, especially in relationships. Revealing every wound too early can blur the line between vulnerability and emotional labor. Not everyone deserves access to your healing journey. It's okay to be discerning about what you share. Healing is not proven by exposure, it's shown in how you live, how you speak to yourself, and how you treat others. Your present is built on your decisions today, not the decisions you regret. You are allowed to change, grow, and evolve without explaining how you got here. You are allowed to be proud of your progress without dragging your history into every room you enter. The power of the present lies in your ability to redefine yourself, on your own terms, in your own time, without apology. Dreams are delicate. They are born in the most vulnerable corners of the soul, quiet, hopeful, and deeply personal. A woman's dream is often not just an ambition or a goal. It's an extension of who she is becoming. It holds her deepest desires, her vision for the future, and the parts of her spirit that haven't yet been shaped by the world's opinions. Because of this, dreams need protection. Not every space is safe for them to exist. Not every person is meant to hear them. When a woman shares her dreams too freely, she opens herself up to projections, doubts, and fears that may not even be hers. A dream in its early stages is fragile. It doesn't need critique, it needs care. It doesn't need interrogation. It needs nourishment, and sometimes the people closest to her, the ones she assumes will support her, become the very voices that plant uncertainty. Not because they're cruel, but because they lack vision. They can't see what she sees, so they try to reduce it to what makes sense to them. And in that process, the dream begins to shrink. Protecting a dream isn't about secrecy. It's about discernment. It's the wisdom to know that something still growing doesn't belong in the harsh climate of public opinion. It's the choice to hold something sacred until it is strong enough to stand on its own. Just like a seedling needs time underground before it breaks through the soil, a dream needs time in silence before it can face the world. Exposure too soon can stunt its growth. Sharing a dream with the wrong person can also make a woman question her own direction. Someone else's fear, jealousy, or limited mindset can cast a shadow over her vision. That shadow becomes a weight she carries even when she tries to move forward. Suddenly, she's not only battling her own inner critic, she's also fighting the voices of others that have taken up space in her mind. Dreams are personal journeys. Not everyone will walk with you, and not everyone should. There is also power in creating without an audience. When a woman works quietly on her dream, she builds a relationship with herself. She learns to trust her own instincts, to rely on her own drive, to listen to her own voice. That internal trust becomes the foundation her dream stands on. The more she protects that space, the more resilient she becomes. The dream stops being a distant idea and starts becoming part of her reality. There's strength in silence, especially when it's intentional. A woman doesn't have to post, prove, or perform her ambition to make it real. Her dream exists because she believes in it, not because others approve of it. Protecting it doesn't make her secretive or selfish. It makes her serious. It means she values what she's building too much to let it be distorted by uninvited opinions or premature exposure. Emotional control is often misunderstood as repression or suppression, an act of bottling up feelings to avoid confrontation or discomfort. But in reality, emotional control is a form of strength, a powerful tool that allows a woman to navigate the world with clarity, grace, and resilience. It is the ability to recognize, process, and choose how to respond to emotions, rather than being controlled by them. It's a deep sense of self-awareness and emotional maturity that creates a foundation of stability in both personal and professional life. To control one's emotions doesn't mean to deny or ignore them. Emotions are human, and they serve as important signals that help guide our decisions and interactions. Emotional control is about understanding these signals and managing them in a way that doesn't allow them to derail you. It's about creating space between an emotional trigger and your reaction, giving you the ability to respond with intention rather than react impulsively. This gap, this moment of pause embodies real power. When a woman can control her emotions, she can control her environment. She is not at the mercy of external events, not easily thrown off balance by criticism, frustration, or stress. Instead of allowing external forces to dictate her inner peace, she creates her own. This is where true strength lies, not in the absence of emotions, but in the ability to stay grounded despite them. Emotional control provides a shield against the chaos of life, enabling her to make thoughtful, measured decisions. Think about a moment of conflict or pressure. Someone says something hurtful, a situation doesn't go as planned, or a disappointment arises. In that instant, emotional control means choosing not to let frustration, anger, or sadness take the wheel. Instead of reacting in a way that might escalate a situation or create further harm, the woman who masters emotional control takes a step back, gathers her thoughts, and chooses how she wants to move forward. Her response is deliberate, not driven by an immediate emotional surge. This isn't weakness. It's the strength to act with wisdom rather than impulse. The ability to manage emotions also builds resilience. Life is full of challenges, and no one can go through it unscathed. What separates those who thrive from those who falter is often the capacity to control their emotional response in difficult moments. Women who practice emotional control are less likely to be overwhelmed by setbacks or frustrations. They see obstacles as opportunities to grow, learning to navigate difficulties without losing their composure or sense of self. Moreover, emotional control fosters healthier relationships. When a woman can regulate her emotions, she can engage with others in a way that is constructive, rather than reactive. She listens deeply, communicates with clarity, and doesn't let temporary feelings cloud her judgment. Her interactions become more thoughtful, her decisions more objective, and her relationships stronger. Emotional control is not about avoiding conflict or pretending everything is fine. It's about handling emotions with maturity and responding in ways that reflect her true values. Ultimately, emotional control equals strength because it empowers a woman to take charge of her life, rather than letting external circumstances dictate her well-being. It allows her to build inner peace and navigate the complexities of life with a steady hand, proving that true strength comes from within. In navigating life, a woman's strength lies in her ability to preserve her power through privacy, protect her dreams, and manage her emotions with grace. She doesn't let her past define her, nor does she feel obligated to share every truth. Her mystery invites curiosity, and her emotional control is the bedrock of resilience. By embracing these principles, she becomes the architect of her own narrative, unapologetically crafting a life that is authentic, empowered, and self-determined. Ultimately, her strength is not in what she reveals, but in what she chooses to protect, nurture, and control within herself.